privilege to work with him, and we articulated that particular concept of medicine security and used it to argue that unless we take hold of how we provide medicines for our people, we will not move forward as a country or as a continent. We made that argument when meningitis broke. We made that argument when Ebola broke. We made that argument in addressing sickle cell anemia. And it seemed like the world wasn't listening until COVID now came and literally threatened to truncate Nigeria and Africa from sources of medicine. And so what we're doing today is actually adding value to what we already know should be bringing forth solutions. I'm sure members of this distinguished platform are not strangers to the fact that Nigeria and other African countries currently have vaccinated less than 5% of our population, whereas at the same time, people in the global north, the high-income countries, some of them are talking about 50%, some of them are talking about 80% of their population being totally vaccinated. We cannot continue going on in that particular paradigm. And that's the reason why, for those of us in the room, the panelists, as well as the attendees, who I'm sure will be giving an opportunity to contribute at the right time, there is no more important assignment for Africa than the assignment we are doing here today. One of my colleagues mentioned that incidentally, it seems like the countries in the western part of the world have now realized that we've also woken up, and that for them to quickly show that they are aligning, they are now putting forward support and funding. And I tell people, yes, support and funding is one thing, but unless we get the ontological and epistemological positions correct, funding will not result in us getting to achieve the objectives that will give us medicine security. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panelists and attendees, without further ado, let me welcome you all to what will prove to be one of the most important assignments for us all this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DG. While the DG was giving his welcome address, the distinguished Honorable Minister of Science and Tech joined the platform. I want to use this opportunity to welcome onto the platform our Honorable Minister of Science and Tech, who is our special guest of honor in this conference, onto the platform to deliver his ministerial statement. Honorable Minister, sir, the floor is yielded to you.
The Honorable Minister of State, Ministry of Health, the Director General of NIPRIT, our renowned speakers, most distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I am happy to speak to you during this National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development webinar conference. I commend NIPRIT and EDLEX law firm for organizing this important conference. This event is timely, and the theme, improving access to COVID-19 vaccines and other interventions, intellectual property, patent waivers, and other critical factors is most appropriate. I understand that this is the third in the webinar conference series, whose aim is to help accelerate national development. NIPRID has worked very hard in promoting research and on drugs and biological products from indigenous natural resources. Also, through appropriate science and technology, NIPRID has continued to assist the nation in meeting her pharmaceutical needs. I commend the Director General for the leadership that he has offered that made it possible for all these achievements to be realized. We expect a lot from NIPRID in the future. Nigeria is home to very rare herbs and plants that, if efficiently exploited, can help find the cure of many diseases that are ravaging the world. Of great interest are some of the diseases that are peculiar to people who have the same color of skin as we do. Nigeria, as home to the largest concentration of Black people in the world, has an obligation to help find cure to such diseases. Also, in our country, there are certain diseases that are so common and yet life-threatening. Breast cancer is the #1 killer for women, just as prostate cancer is for our men. It is therefore important that we go into our forests, harvest herbs and plants, and conduct research and development to find cure for such diseases. In doing this, we will be creating jobs as well as wealth for our citizens, reduce poverty, strengthen our currency, and help our nation to become self-reliant. The COVID-19 pandemic that is ravaging the world has shown clearly that every nation must pay attention. Oh, sorry. I hope, come and chill. I hope, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
We can hear you, distinguished person.
Yeah, thank you. Can pay attention to science, technology, and innovation in order to be in a position to feed her citizens, clothe, shelter, and educate them, just as it is extremely important to take care of the sick. The vaccination program aimed at controlling the COVID-19 pandemic has produced vaccine nationalism, whereby many of the developed countries have vaccinated 60% or more of their citizens, while many of the developing countries are yet to vaccinate even up to 2% of their citizens. Nothing in recent history has clearly shown the importance of science, technology, and innovation to the well-being of people. NIPRID must continue to use science, technology, and innovation to help Nigeria become self-sufficient in drugs, medicines, and the medical supplies. NIPRID will have to work closely with the organized private sector so that new pharmaceutical firms can be established. These can and should grow into some of the largest pharmaceutical firms in the world in the years to come. For this to happen, there is the need to ensure the protection of intellectual property rights. I am happy that NIPRID is working very closely with ELEX, which is widely reputed in its excellence in legal practice. This relationship will be useful to the nation in advancing and the protection of the intellectual property rights in Nigeria. This will encourage the highly skilled manpower in NIPRID in the areas of pharmaceutical, medical, and biomedical sciences to work harder for the good of the nation. I am optimistic that the discussions you are holding today will be fruitful. It will aid the discussion on how to advance, promote, and protect intellectual property rights. By doing so, you can produce new drugs, medicines, and medical supplies. On behalf of the Federal Ministry of Science and Technology, I especially congratulate the Director General, Dr. Obi Peter Adigwe, the management and staff of NIPRID for the work they are doing for our great nation. I am happy that NIPRID is working closely with some agencies in the Federal Ministry of Science and Technology. Such collaboration is needed for the effective and efficient exploitation of the resources of our great nation. I am confident that with this level of hard work, commitment, and determination, Nigeria, our dear nation, will in the near future produce all the drugs, medicines, and medical supplies that we need, as is being done in some countries in the world. Again, I wish you very successful deliberations. I look forward to receiving the outcome of your deliberation during this very important conference. I thank you all. May God bless our dear country, Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, sir. We are glad and appreciate those kind words and words of encouragement. Without wasting much ado, I want to call on distinguished Senator, Honorable Minister of State for Health, our chief host, to present the ministerial statement and declare the conference open. Distinguished Senator, sir, the floor is yielded to you.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Minister of Science and Tech, our highly respected Dr. Bonaya Ono, I must thank you especially for being part of this. Permit me to align with other protocol already established. I am profoundly delighted to be here at this webinar with the theme, improving access to COVID-19 vaccines and other interventions. Intellectual property, patent waivers, and other critical factors, organized by the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development in collaboration with ELEX, an international law firm with offices spread in various regions of the world. The importance of this topic cannot be overemphasized in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, the effects of which are still being felt worldwide. NIPRID has remained a key institution in the churning out of strategic interventions to close the gap in knowledge, as well as experience sharing on how best to tame the monster called COVID-19 pandemic. In demonstration of proactiveness following the outbreak of the pandemic, the Federal Ministry of Health, through Nigeria's Center for Disease Control, led a national COVID-19 emergency operations center to coordinate the national public health response. The Federal Ministry of Health also welcomed the interventions made by NIPRID in introducing qualitative hand sanitizer, gel, and wash for commercial use of Nigerians. In the same vein, the Federal Ministry of Health worked through the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, to expedite the emergency registration and eventually approved the use of Oxford AstraZeneca as well as the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccines in Nigeria. The Federal Ministry of Health directed the National Primary Health Care Development Agency to lead Nigeria's efforts to assess and administer a safe and effective COVID-19 vaccine to her citizens. However, with the development of the first vaccine mid-2020, the main challenge was no longer the absence of any approved vaccines for COVID-19, but rather the present issue was how nations could have access to such vaccines for their citizens. As all the vaccines were developed by foreign countries with patent protection, access of the vaccine worldwide, especially to countries in Africa, has been quite difficult. The Federal Ministry of Health has put in place a mechanism for ensuring a first-line indigenous pharmaceutical company, that's BioVaccine Nigeria Limited, to set up a modern vaccine production farm and encourage local manufacturing. Despite the existing impediments, the National Primary Health Care Development Agency received 3.92 million vaccines, doses of vaccines, out of the expected 14 million doses of Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine through the COVAX facility on March 2nd, 2020. The National Primary Healthcare Development Agency also successfully placed a bid for 70 million doses of one-shot Johnson & Johnson vaccine. A total of 1,794,552 Nigerians have received the first dose of Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine across the 36 states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory. The second dose vaccination with the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine has already commenced. Since the outbreak of the pandemic, Nigeria has recorded about 165,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 infection and just over 2,000 deaths. These statistics indicate that Nigeria's response activities to COVID-19 pandemic has been very encouraging and applauded in Africa and beyond. The comprehensive multi-sectoral approach model adopted by the Presidential Task Force, an initiative of President Muhammadu Buhari on COVID-19 pandemic, indeed yielded positive results in the country's response to the pandemic. Such gains are being sustained through the continuous coordination of the new Presidential Steering Committee, which is a successor to Presidential Task Force. The intersection between intellectual property and health has never been as clearly defined as in recent times. There is a corresponding need to improve our intellectual property protection systems, even as we improve on our healthcare infrastructure. It is arguable that the proposed patent waivers at the World Trade Organization will provide countries such as Nigeria with equitable access to vaccines and other cutting-edge health technology to better the lives and health of its citizens. However, this is something that needs to be examined closely in order to determine if such actions will be beneficial to all the parties involved. The NIPRID's second strategic plan, 2021 to 2025, clearly shows the ambitious targets which the Institute is striving to implement. Indeed, NIPRID is currently on the right trajectory to the attainment of excellence in marshalling the strategic framework to actualize Nigeria's medicines security stability. I assure you of the continuous support and cooperation of the Federal Ministry of Health in achieving your set goals and institutional mandates. I look forward to the discussions among the various stakeholders on promoting local manufacture of COVID-19 vaccines, the possibility of waiver of intellectual property rights, and the significance of intellectual property in the pharmaceutical industry. Once again, just as what I saw firsthand on ground at the Institute on 28th January 2021, during my tour of facilities at NIPRID, I sincerely, on behalf of the Federal Ministry of Health, commend the giant innovative strides of the DG, Dr. Obi Adigwe of NIPRID, and his entire team in the transformative quest for a better research and development potentials of the Institute. I urge you to keep your eyes on the ball in the onerous task of revitalizing and upgrading NIPRID to become the driving force of Nigeria becoming the pharmaceutical hub in Africa. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, sir. And we are glad for the, thank you very much, distinguished Senator and Honorable Minister, sir. We will go straight ahead to have the keynote address. I want to invite onto the podium to present the keynote address titled Harnessing Local Manufacturing Potential for COVID-19 Interventions, the West African Perspective. This will be presented by no other person but our own Dr. Okwe Akpa, the President, West African Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association, WAPMA. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Director of Program. and thank you, distinguished audience. I would like to start by especially thanking the honorable ministers on this call, the Honorable Minister of Science and Technology, Dr. Ogbonnaya, and Dr. Senator Olorinimbe Mamora, Honorable Minister of State, Minister of Health, my own minister that supervises my own activity. It's a pleasure, sir, to have you on the platform. And I want to continue to go back to thank you for the support you give to the industry. I will not forget that you personally attended the Farmer Expo of PMG Man and stayed all through and toured all the stand. And I will not forget the encouragement you gave to me personally by saying nothing should deter us from continuously putting effort to encourage local manufacturing. Therefore, Honorable Minister, you wouldn't imagine how happy I am to be sharing platform again with you this morning. Dr. Obi Adigwe, DG NIPRID, you're already writing your name in gold, given the work you're doing to ensure local production. I want to thank you, and I want to thank the leadership of Alex Legal Firm for both of you giving me the honor to be here. I want to thank, and ahead of time, my other co-panelists and speakers who has been so carefully chosen this morning. I want to recognize them. It's a pity that Honorable Minister Dr. Ogbonnaya just left the platform because I wanted to greet him, especially in our dialect, because he is my own personal minister, and I wanted to give him his title, which no other person on this platform can give to him except me. So when you see, I will speak to you when next we see in the village. Distinguished audience, if you give me permission, I would like to share my slide. I don't know if I have that capacity to do so. I will try to do it now.
You can, sir.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Very well, sir.
Clearly,
okay,
go ahead.
Is my screen on?
Yes, your
Yes,
screen
sir.
is on. Your PowerPoint was on, but you've just taken it off again.
Oh, sorry. Is it back on now?
It's coming
Back
on.
now.
It's on.
Okay. Thank you very much again for...
Yes, it's back, sir.
Sorry? Is it on now?
It is.
Okay.
Sir, you have 15 minutes more.
Well, I'm not getting the cooperation of the slide movement.
It's back on.
Well, the slide is not...
Are you sure it's on slideshow, sir?
Yeah. Well, I may have to present without a slide.
Okay, sir.
Well, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I will try to give an overview as the keynote speaker, and then I will zero in on the experience of the industry and what the industry would think we could be doing. This topic cannot be cannot be exhausted, but discussing this at this time is so timely. We will follow a very brief outline. I will give an overview of coronavirus pandemic and how the fight has shaped and what access means to us. Because I have been appointed the keynote speaker, I will try to touch a little bit on patents, trip and waivers, and then I will leave that to the experts in the room. Then I'll give the industry view, and I would have set the stage for a robust discussion. As you all know, the first case of COVID was reported on 31st December 2019. Nigeria recorded its first case on February 27, as confirmed by Federal Ministry of Health 2020. The Honorable Minister of State Health had already given some very accurate statistics concerning COVID. I will not be repeating that. Those statistics says it all, that no other disease in the modern history has impacted the world negatively as COVID, and still counting. It has brought everything down to its nil. Fighting the battle, the role of vaccines. The battle against COVID has been fought following the guidelines of WHO. And this battle is hinged from preventing infection, breaking up spread, and of course, managing the infected. From non-pharmaceutical intervention to acquiring immunity, the slogan is everyone must take responsibility, both at individual level and at national level. So the first point I would like to make from the industry is that taking responsibility should be at individual level. It should also be at national level. The two honorable ministers have already led that fact, that vaccine nationalism and inequity has brought to the fore the debate for medicine security. To win the battle against COVID means that vaccination must be everywhere, because an infection anywhere is potentially an infection everywhere. So the whole idea of vaccine inequity is a threat to the world. We all have seen it. We were safe as a country until only one passenger arrived our shore, and the rest is history. Vaccine inequity will not work. Global cover is a must. And that is why this discussion is critical to us. The Honorable Minister of State Health also gave us a rundown of the vaccines that have been developed, both the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine that got emergency use approval 2020, down to the two that are from China, the Sinopharm and Sinovac, and AstraZeneca, which we are using. The first mass vaccination took place December 2020. Where are we as a country? Again, I'll be relying on the statistics already given by Honorable Minister, which is the same statistics, that in the whole world today, 2.7 billion doses of vaccine has been administered as at June 2021. Nigeria has administered less than 3 million. As a matter of fact, the last time I checked this figure, it was 2.23 million. And that translates to about 1% of global figure given. For a country as critical as us, this is not adequate. Africa has recorded about 2%. And so Africa and Nigeria has a very long way to go. The key question becomes, if we have a very long way to go, what is the best route to achieving access to vaccines? Do we rely on donations? Do we manufacture our own, or do we buy? If we want to buy, we will not be able to meet this as we desire. If we depend on donation, your guess is as good as mine. It will be beggars, and if they have choice. And so, from the industry perspective, the only viable option to us is for us to make our vaccines, not just for COVID, but going forward. Out of the three options, let me honor the title I have been given as the keynote speaker by briefly broaching on patents and TRIPS. I have two strong lawyers in the house, so I will not be bothered whether I'm going to do a good job here or not. It will be their call. A patent, as you all know, is a type of intellectual property that gives its owner legal right to exclude others from making, using, or selling an invention for a limited period of years in exchange for publishing and enabling public disclosure of the invention. Therefore, a patent gives the right to the owner to stop others from using the invention. A patent holder can as well also license the invention for use or sale. The trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights TRIP agreement is part of WTO agreements to which Nigeria is a signatory to. TRIP aims to facilitate innovation and trade in knowledge and creativity industry through providing global minimum standards for protection and enforcement of intellectual property rights, including patents. In Nigeria, the laws regulating intellectual property in Nigeria are the Trademarks Act, the Patents and Designs Act, the Merchandise Act, Copyright Act, the Federal High Court Civil Procedure Rules, the Cybercrime Act 2015. The enforcement of intellectual property rights in Nigeria is very active through various regulatory bodies, the Trademark Registry, Corporate Affairs Commission, NAFDAC, just to mention three. From the industry, I can categorically tell you that intellectual property right to design and brand names is very strongly regulated. You would not have a product go through NAFDAC if you do not qualify and pass these hurdles. And so my fellow panelists will be discussing this and the impact it has in the industry. As I begin to zero in and conclude my paper, the pharma industry and TRIPS. Pharma industry invests huge resources in researching, inventing, and getting approval for therapeutic agents and medicines to treat diseases and emerging diseases. According to the study done by Tufts University Center for Study of Drug Development, an estimated cost of $2.6 billion is required on the average to develop a new molecule, a new therapeutic molecule. And so drug research and development attracts high cost. It's time consuming. It is also risky because you are not guaranteed to get results. And for this reason, patent holders justify their position, why they should be protected. But there is also the other argument. If they are being protected, at what cost? Does protection of this right justify the risk that patent protection may pose due to limited or no access to medicines that are under patent, especially in low-income countries like our own? So the key question before us today is, how do we come out of this balance of how do you protect an industry that has invested over $2.6 billion to arrive at a therapeutic molecule? And how do you protect a population that cannot afford the medicine so developed? There must be a way. There must be a way. So the profit versus life debate is a strong one. There must be a way to solve it. And one of the ways to solve this is through local manufacturing and developing your own capacity through collaboration. And that is where NIPRID is such a critical body in the healthcare architecture of any country. Because as a country, the industry level of development in West Africa is not strong enough on its own to embark on original research. You have heard the kind of money being touted. So a body like NIPRID, which is the only one of its type in sub-Saharan Africa known to us, and maybe in Africa known to us, it is high time that we begin to design a model that will continue to bring NIPRID closer to the industry and support it. From our perspective in West Africa, we think that companies should be encouraged to offer waivers for such items like COVID-19 vaccine that are targeted at pandemic situations. But there must be a mutually beneficial arrangement, because to ask industry to do this would be to discourage further discovery. However, should there be a problem, TRIPS provide for compulsory licensing through Article 30 and Article 31 of WTO. But these two articles requires that a third party first makes an attempt to negotiate for voluntary license before it can move on to compulsory licensing. The process of voluntary licensing is based on the case for national emergency like we do have, and a case for not-for-profit. In the industry, our view is that compulsory licensing or waivers or whatever we achieve is not just the only factor that is necessary for us to have local manufacturing and create access. Therefore, there are other critical factors like the organizers of this seminar have recognized, far beyond compulsory licensing. From the industry perspective, such factors are funding. We have to find a way to make affordable funding available to the industry. This is one of the factors inhibiting our growth. Because when you get a license, it does not give you the factory. It does not give you the machinery. It does not give you the technology. It does not give you the critical raw materials that you require to make the vaccine. And these are the issues in the world today. The argument is that even if you get compulsory licensing, the challenge posed by availability of raw material to make COVID-19 vaccine will still be there. And if the country does not have a way of navigating it, it is still back to square one. We need right regulatory framework and a strong national regulatory agencies like NAFDAC, which is being strengthened under this administration and the leadership of Ministry of Health. We are grateful to see that this is happening. We need expertise. We need strong R&D institutions like NIPRID to provide support and sustain the vaccine value chain. NIPRID will have a lot to contribute if there's going to be a viable vaccine industry in Nigeria, because there are other elements in the value chain which the industry will rely on them to provide. Logistics, the cold chain system, the on-time delivery system, and these are the areas NIPRID can collaborate to design models that will help us. Trained medical and healthcare personnel that will drive consumer access will also be a critical factor. And finally, for us in the industry, is government policies that will safeguard the investment. In the West African body, the question, Honorable Minister, of State has always been, why have there not been a strong manufacturing, vaccine manufacturing industry? The answer is two factors, Honorable Minister and distinguished audience. One is that vaccines are mainly targeted at public health situations. So if there is no guaranteed offtake through a policy framework that will guarantee that when you make your vaccines locally, somebody does not go elsewhere under the argument of price or whatever to bring vaccine, you will not have a viable market. The second is that vaccine production is capital intensive because the technology is advanced and you cannot compromise on it. So, Honorable Minister, one of the takeaways the industry would like to put on the table is government policies that will encourage investment in this area. For Nigeria, therefore, it is a wake-up call. We call for collaboration. In West Africa, we have over 250 factories, Nigeria accounting for over 200 of such alone. As president of WAPMA, the West African Pharmaceutical Manufacturers, I can confidently tell the House that Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast, and Senegal have what you could call developing pharmaceutical industry infrastructure. Any of these four countries I have mentioned in West Africa can comfortably host vaccine plants. Let me take the panel back to history. Nigeria used to have a vaccine manufacturing plant in Yaba. The Honorable Minister of State in the House will confirm this. So vaccine manufacturing is not something we cannot attain. It's something we have attained before. It's something we are positioned now to attain. Senegal, as we speak, has a vaccine manufacturing plant. But the challenge is that the capacity of these plants is not aligned with what we are discussing today. The technology also is outdated. So, Honorable Minister, it's such a pleasure that we'll have you in the House. So the view in the industry, from the industry, is that there are 350 million of us in West Africa. We cannot depend on donation. Neither can we afford to wait to be buying. The fastest and easiest route is to locate vaccine manufacturing factories in strategic countries in West Africa, Nigeria being the number one because of our population. The number two is that we can achieve this through a collaborative approach. And the industry is calling for public-private sector, stroke research development agencies, stroke international development partners like WHO and USAID. It will be my pleasure, and I put this on the table of NIPRID, to call a multi-sectorial dialogue on vaccine production and bring in the room WHO, USAID, and other such bodies with government leading it and industry standing in the front to commit to an investment. We have members who are willing to invest this money. If the policy framework is right, like I said before, we are guaranteed market because COVID will go. And when COVID goes, what do we do with the plant we are going to establish? So we need that policy framework to be in place, and we need that support. We need the commitment that vaccine plant will be viable going forward. I will end my presentation by saying, someone said, a crisis is bad enough, don't waste it. The worst thing you can do in a crisis is to waste it. COVID-19 is a crisis. We should not waste it as a country. We should not waste it as a region. And the way not to waste it is to key in on what we have now, Honorable Minister, distinguished panelists and audience, and convoke a national dialogue immediately on vaccine production and put our boot on the ground and immediately sidetrack. In the last meeting I attended at the Wahoo level on behalf of WAPMA, there are already models on the ground for modular vaccine production. well developed, and easy to implement. We can also adopt the fill and finish model. We don't have to wait until we can develop from scratch. A fill and finish model will give us a vaccine plant in less than a year and ready and good to go. But the framework needs to be in place, the commitment needs to be in place, and on this panel are people who can make it. And when we have such framework, to get compulsory licensing will be a case we can easily make. Apologies to the lawyers in the House. They will navigate us through it. But if they don't agree, countries on that trip has the right to go ahead. That is how India started. That is why India is where it is. Distinguished panelists, Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, apologies that I'm not able to follow my slide, but I think I've been able to go through it. On the last page, you will see the references to my paper. I am waiting here to be called to action. It is time to act. Let us not waste the crisis called COVID. Thank you, and God bless you for listening to me.
Thank you very much. We didn't expect anything less. Our erudite, Dr. Okweakpa, thank you. And as you rightly said, the platform has all the necessary and relevant people that need to take note, especially the last aspect where you have demonstrated a shorter and fastest and easiest route to attain that self-sufficiency in acquiring vaccines in West Africa and Nigeria. I implore the attendees to take note, and they can use the Q&A options and send in their questions before we get to the interactive session. As a way of taking and reducing time wasting, we are actually on schedule. I will call on the second presenter, who is to present for 20 minutes. And the presenter is Barrister Olufemi Agaba. He's the President, Intellectual Property Law Association of Nigeria, IPLAN. The topic he will be presenting on is the legal implications of the waiver of intellectual property rights for vaccines and medicines. I yield the floor to Barrister Olufemi Agaba.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Good morning, Honorable Minister of State, Ministry of Health, the Senator from proud Lagos. And I know him very well as a kid. He may not know me, so I'm proud to be on this platform with you today. I'm Agaba, and I'm from Ekpe in Lagos State. Maybe that says a bit. The DG, I must give you lots of kudos for putting this together. This is very, very important, and it is good to know that the parastatals in Nigeria are doing things that we can relate with as a people. This touches us, and I think a lot of kudos should be given to your parastatal for putting this together, and as well as Alex. Dr. Akpa, I think that you are not a pharmacist. I don't think that you are just somebody in the health sector. I think that you have imbibed a bit of law into your system, and a bit of activism has also been imbibed into the system. And I think it's fantastic. And I always say that no lawyer is a real lawyer if it doesn't understand the industry in which it plays. Industry knowledge is key to anything you do. And I think it is fantastic to be on this platform today. I don't know if the moderator is the one sharing my slides. I had sent it in. Thank you.
The Secretariat is sharing it, sir.
Thank you very much. So we can go to the next slide. So as mentioned, my name is Obafemi Agaba, and I am the President of Intellectual Property Law Association of Nigeria, IPLAN. IPLAN is a private organization that invites all stakeholders in intellectual property into its fold. So it's not an association for lawyers, but it's an association for any organization or any individual that IP impacts on your activities. We all need to come together to make sure that the IPO regime in Nigeria is in the right direction and our laws are up to date. We need to change our laws. They have been at the National Assembly. Nothing has been done about them. I will always make noise about that. I am also a partner in the law firm of Jackson, Etty, and Edu, and you can see my credentials, they humble me. So let's go to the nitty-gritty of today's discourse. When you look at the topic that was given to me, it says waivers, but I then put in something in bracket, compulsory licenses, because what we are talking about today goes beyond just waivers. Would waivers just come? We'll get to that point. Now, COVID-19 has thrown up something which we all didn't anticipate. When I look at COVID-19, what it brings to my mind was a novel we read as children, Time Changes Yesterday. Indeed, COVID-19 has come and it has changed a lot of things. The need for access to vaccines and other medical supplies has taken central stage in global discourse because of the impact of this pandemic. And what we've seen, Dr. Akpa has also alluded to it today, is that we're all calling on the pharma companies to grant waivers to ensure access to vaccines. Government and international organizations are also being called upon to create an enabling environment for compulsory license for us to be able to have access to these drugs. So what we are trying to do today with my presentation is to highlight the meaning of waiver and compulsory license, and to see to what extent under international law and under our municipal law are these allowed. And if they are allowed, what are the implications of a waiver or the grant of a compulsory license in respect of COVID-19 vaccines? Now, Dr. Akpa probably knows better than all of us the total value chain in the production of any drug, in the production of any medicine. It takes lots of years. It involves a lot of research and development, and a lot of money goes into it. And the sad part is that it is not everything that the research goes into that comes out at the other end as something for the market. So there's a lot of huge investment that goes into production of pharma products, running into billions of dollars, right? Next slide, please. So we already know that there's a lot of investment coming from the pharma industry. And the question is, should their investment be protected? At the end of the day, what they have come up with are products, and these products are subject of their ownership, the concept of ownership. And ownership is talking about your ability to control that which you own, that relationship which you have with that in which you have created, to have the exclusive right of control over it. So in the context of intellectual property rights, the law endorses the right of every individual or company to claim and exclusively exploit the produce of their intellectual exaction, which is manifested as invented product or processes, creative works of knowledge or entertainment, products of aesthetics appeal, or trade insignias of products and services like trademarks. All of these are intellectual property which the law protects. And when we begin to look at pharmaceutical products, you'll find that, next slide, please. You will find that in the area of intellectual property, all these rights, copyright, trademarks, patent, trade secrets, and industrial designs will impact on the business of drug production and manufacture. But of most important to the pharma industry is patents, because at the end of the day, the drug which you're taking is a product of an invention, and inventions are protected by what? Patent. And what does patent do? What is patent? Patent is simply a grant of monopoly. Simply put, is a grant of limited monopoly granted to that person who has invested a lot of time, money, resources, sweat in the research, the manufacture, and the production of this medicine. He has employed a lot of people. He has done a lot. So the law feels that having gone through all of this, running through several years, the man is entitled to be compensated in order to derive some returns from his investment. And that is why the law grants him most times about 20 years for exclusivity in the exploitation of the product of his sweat. That seems fair enough. I guess we would all agree that it seems fair enough that if Dr. Akpa has come up with research and has come up with a product, it needs to go home with some money. Otherwise, Dr. and Mrs. Akpa will have something to do with him when the money is not coming back. Next slide, please. So the question we all have today is that, yes, this man needs to be compensated for his efforts. But in situations where we are faced with pandemic as we are in the world today, what should we do? We are in a dilemma. So it becomes a delicate balancing of the right of investment to recoup from investment and the need to protect the society. There has to be a delicate balancing. And I think that is why the question of waivers have come up. Now, waivers is the intentional and voluntary surrender of a privilege or right which a person may choose to exercise by law. So the law has granted you a right. The question of waiver is your voluntary submission of that right, of that privilege. It is a matter of your prerogative to decide that I want to relinquish my right. So is that what we need at this point in time? It is an option that all of us will be happy. And so the point we're making is that a patent holder who has been granted patent may choose to waive his right to the exclusive production, sale, and use of COVID-19 vaccine by allowing others to produce the medicine using the technology evolved by him. And we saw an example of that in 2020 when it was announced that Moderna would not enforce its patents right related to the experimental COVID-19. We saw that happening. So that is waiver. So what happens if a company decides not to waive its right? Are we going to leave the whole world wallowing in this pandemic? Next slide, please. I guess that is where the concept of compulsory licensing comes in. So in the case of compulsory license, the proprietor of the intellectual property right is compelled by law to allow other persons the use of his rights with financial other benefits as compensation. And I think that's very important. So when we are talking about compulsory licensing, there is an element of compulsion where the proprietor of the right is compelled by law to allow other persons to exploit his rights, but with compensation coming back to him. And I think we need to bear that in mind during our discourse on this issue. Now, what are we saying? We're saying that the idea of compulsory licensing becomes very important in circumstances such as the one we find ourselves in the world today, where there are serious public health emergencies. Are we saying that companies or holders of patent rights should waive their right, or we should compel them to release their right to others? What are we going to do? Next slide, please. Now, the beautiful thing about law, right from the time I was a law student, is that the law teacher in the classroom would always tell us, this is the principle of law. And almost every principle of law I have come across is a general rule, which admits some exceptions. So lawyers are not crazy. Lawyers are not mad. We are very, very nice. We'll create the rules, but we understand that we are human beings, and human beings are not infallible. And therefore, the law always admits of some reasonable exceptions. So, Doctor already alluded to TRIPS. You know, I've told you he's also a lawyer. He's not just a pharmacist. So he's told us about TRIPS, and I will not waste time on that. But what TRIPS has done, TRIPS has given private rights to owners of intellectual property rights. But it recognizes that that can only be a general position, but there must be some exceptions. And so in Article 30 of TRIPS, it creates that exceptions. by allowing contracting states to provide limited exceptions to the exclusive patent right. If these do not conflict with the exploitation of the patent and does not unreasonably prejudice the legitimate interest of the patent owner and third parties. Now, that is very instructive. What that tells us easily is that even though the pharma company has been granted the patent right, even TRIPS recognizes the need to derogate from that right under appropriate circumstances. What are these circumstances? They have been enumerated in Article 31. So in Article 31 of TRIPS, it is clear to us that we can derogate from the right, from the exclusive right of the patent owner. Authorization of use shall be considered on its individual merit. So an application can be made, but these applications are considered on their individual merit. And it shall be granted when the proposed user has made efforts to obtain authorization from the manufacturer, but they have not been able to strike a commercial deal within reasonable time. So you are first of all allowed to go and approach the owner of this right to try and negotiate a contractual term with him. And it is only when you are unable to strike a balance within reasonable time that you can begin to make an application for compulsory license to waive that right or to get that right out. Now, a number of conditions have been set under patent, under TRIPS here. Because of time, I don't want to go through everything, but it is also important to know that when compulsory license is granted under TRIPS, it is only for manufacture within that particular country that has applied for it. So if Nigeria has obtained compulsory license we've been given, we are not supposed to then manufacture for Ghana or for Togo. It is just for that country. Now, the only thing, which again is the beauty of the law and under TRIPS, is that Dr. Akpa also mentioned it. It is not enough to have a license. What about the capacity to manufacture? What about the other indices that will make everything work together? And so you find that in some countries, even if you grant them compulsory license, they do not have the wherewithal to manufacture, or they do not even have the technology to manufacture. And in these situations, has been anticipated under TRIPS, by TRIPS saying that in appropriate circumstances, again, a country that has been granted compulsory license may be able to export the product to another country which does not have sufficient capacity to manufacture. So I think that will go a long way in helping. So the point we have made thus far, we can change the slides now, sir. The point we have made thus far, it has not reached, thank you, sir. Okay.
President, your time is probably up.
Okay. I can then summarize if I've been technically knocked off. But the point to make is
Secretariat, please just rush through the last few slides so that we
I will just sum it up in 5 minutes. I think we can go to the next slide. This slide shows the conditions that need to be met if you are now exporting to another country that does not have manufacturing capacity under TRIPS. But the important thing to note is that under our local laws in Nigeria, our patent law also grants, that's slide 12, please. Our patent law also grants compulsory license. There are provisions for compulsory license under the Patent Act in Nigeria, and that is shown in slide 13. You see the conditions where it can be granted to a person and when patent for service of government agency. So our law anticipates. So the beautiful thing is that some might argue that TRIPS does not have immediate application to Nigeria because it has not been domesticated. But the point is that under our local law, the Patent Act, there is provision for compulsory license. So there's a basis for us to act. And we can see in countries like India, they've been able to apply all of this. And presently, when we go to slide 15, sir, when we go to slide 15, we will see that India and South Africa have already submitted a proposal for the suspension of provisions of TRIPS in order to allow exploitation of COVID-19 patents. And then the question that follows is, what is the legal implication of this waiver or the grant of this compulsory license? And that is in slide 16. And the point we're making, the legal implication, simply put, is that you have stripped that man of his right of exclusivity. You have stripped that man of his right of his exclusivity to exclusively exploit his patent. And I think beyond saying what are the legal implications, the implications surrounding that go beyond legal, because the main legal thing is that we have stripped him of his right of exclusivity. And attendant to that are a whole lot of social, economic, imports of that situation. Is the man encouraged to continue to do R&D? Is the man encouraged to continue to spend a lot of money trying to bring about good? Is the man going to be put in a position where the survival of his company is at risk and all the jobs that depend on that work are also at risk? And what is the social impact of loss of jobs? All of this we can envisage when you strip a man of his right to make economic gains from his investment. That, I think, is very important for us to note. And that takes us to the next slide. In order to save time, the point at the end of the day is that there is the argument that says that the need for compulsory license has to do with saving of life. And so how do we balance the need to save life and the need for economic compensation is what we need to be looking at. So at the end of the day, to summarize, Nigeria and under international law, compulsory license is provided for. But in exercising this right, we must be able to balance it with other socioeconomic factors in order that at the end of the day, we do not save lives and then the economy is grounded and those lives have nothing to depend on. I think it's important to say. The other slides, if we just go down quickly so that we can wrap it up because of time. Argument against compulsory license are things we've mentioned there, and in favor, we've already highlighted the importance of human life, the need to save it, and even our constitution grants us the right to good health as a human right, if not a fundamental right. And are there alternatives to compulsory license? Well, said there can be other alternatives in order to strike a balance, like the voluntary technology transfer and disclosure, addressing structural and capacity issues by low-income, least developed countries like ours. And I think what Dr. Hakpa said in the course of his presentation is very important. His message to the Honorable Minister is very important in looking at that second alternative. And of course, the issue of voluntary licensing as waivers is also something that is welcome on board. If we can just go to the last slide, which is conclusion. Is just summarizing all we've said. The law provides for this, but we need to strike a right balance. And I think with these few words, we hope that we've been able to add some value to this discourse. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Barrister Obafemi Agaba.
Yes.
We will take, as I mentioned earlier, participants and attendees should remember to take notes and share their comments using the Q&A and the chat notes. I will call on the third speaker, our own Professor Martins Emerge, alternate chair R&D NIPRID. The topic he is going to be presenting on is as displayed, COVID-19, friend or foe for R&D. Professor Martins, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. At Scientific Happen, if I greet my minister, my DG, and fellow APA, then they will beat me. So, Honorable Minister, sir, my DG, Dr. Adigwe, then fellow Dr. Oke Akpa, Actually, when I say fellow, I'm not saying he's a colleague. I'm saying that he's a fellow of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, the highest professional award given to any lay person in pharmacy practice in the country. It's a privilege to be here, and in the next few minutes, I shall be sharing with us idea, concept, and the way we see COVID-19. I'm not going to answer that question. Friend or foe for R&D, if you are expecting that I'm going to provide an answer to that question, I'm not going to provide an answer. By the time I'm done with my slides, you will provide an answer for yourself. But for NIPRID, we have an answer, and you are going to see the answer in the course of this presentation. My name is Emeje Martins. I happen to be working currently as a professor in the institute and here and developer with my DG. Okay, so before I begin, let's quickly look at this slide, which like of pharmacy, to call it that way.
Your network, Prof, I think your network is a bit iffy. Maybe if you take off your visuals so that, you know, it will be a bit stronger, and then some of us on the platform will also do that, because we can't hear you very clearly.
Can you hear me now? Is it better, Dr. D?
Much better, much better.
It's much better, sir.
Okay, sir. Okay. So let's quickly look at this slide. This slide shows the 5 countries that are currently doing something about vaccine. Senegal is a producer of a pre-qualified vaccine for yellow fever. Egypt is making a DTP vaccine and some fill finish. South Africa is doing a fill finish. Tunisia is doing a limited BCG and rabies vaccine. Ethiopia is about to start. Nigeria, I don't know whether we are about that or we are still discussing. That is just is food for thought. Let's think about it. Okay, but we go on to see. In the next slide, let's look at it this way. You know, Africa took 3 significant steps before COVID came for stronger economic future. In 2018 March, the African Union launched the African Free Trade, a single to generate more than $3.5 billion and benefit over 1 billion people. This was before COVID. 1 year later, there was an affiliate center of the world for 4th industry. Guess where? On South Africa. The focal point, challenges and opportunities were on advanced technologies. Physical, digital, and biological worlds began to merge. Africa's economy is dominated by agriculture, extractive, and manufacturing industries. Therefore, there has always been opportunity to transform and thrive, but there's a need for tools of disruption. So when Dr. Akpa said that it is time to work, it's no longer time to. I was on Good Morning Nigeria this morning, and that's exactly what I said. I said we talk too much, actually. The World Economic Forum also launched the African Growth Platform, if we remember. It was an initiative aimed at helping startup enterprises to grow and compete internationally. Let's not forget that even though in Africa, we had a 13% higher than global average in terms of economic growth, but on a general note, in the area under the curve, we were a failure. The African Growth Platform was expected to bring together governments, investors, and businesses to help startups thrive and become sustainable. These were all plans before COVID-19. So follow me carefully so that we know whether COVID-19 is a foe or a friend. But what are the characteristics of Africa and our economy? inequality, poor agricultural productivity, youth unemployment, and expecting that 2.4 billion people
This person needs to add you because you are going to give a comment. What's his name? Charles.
Can you hear me? Because I'm hearing a sound. Dr. D, are you complaining?
Yes, we can hear.
Okay. So, Africa's urgent revolution. As Africa grabs the promise of the fourth industrial revolution, maybe we will be happy to hear this. There are more than 400 technology hubs in Africa. Lagos, Nairobi, and Cape Town are the 3 cities that host most of these hubs in Africa. Thousands of startups, incubators, accelerators, innovation hubs, technology parks. I'm sure we're happy to see Lagos there. Okay. Mobile Learning App International before COVID. This is before COVID, according to GSMA Ecosystem Report of 2018. Recently, it was raised to $170 million. One of the largest funding rounds achieved by an African-focused startup. There's $1 billion IPO for Jumia, the largest e-commerce company on the continent and the first African technology startup to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Proactive government policy like that of Tunisia's Startup Act is helping to foster culture of innovation. Therefore, if we don't take anything from my presentation, we should remember that a proactive government policy is key to economic development of any nation, whatever sector. And Tunisia is a typical example right now. Remember the first map I showed you and where Tunisia is currently. The World Economic Forum's Readiness for Future Production Report 2018 says that 25 African countries assessed, 22 have low level of readiness for the future. This was before COVID-19. It was due to lack of necessary enabling conditions and lack of technology platforms and innovation capacity. Absence of cooperative action, a major factor. Cooperative action spurs the chances of success even more than technology. And that is why if only we had a whole day, we would have shown you, for example, the kind of cooperation that we are currently embarking on at NIPRI, so that you see what we are talking about. So, policy, regulation, finance, infrastructure, education, and talent are key driving factors. Otherwise, you will just be talking. All must come together, all, not one. All of these must come together in an innovation ecosystem, focused on an integrated agenda and propelled by unconstrained collaboration. Innovation is creation of knowledge or technology. For example, in the academia and in a research-based academic institution like NIPRI, papers and patents are direct indicators for evaluating knowledge and accumulation. If you remember, when COVID-19 came initially, there were a lot of publications and decisions being taken by very strong regulatory agencies across the globe, like that of FDA and UK, were mostly based on publications that were coming out of highly impactful and recognized, respected, reputable academic journals. And that was why the world was angry when Lancet was accused of publishing some questionable papers. So papers are critical for industrial technology development. I must say this to disabuse the mind of people that think that publication, because when you hear these days that people say it is only publication they are interested, look, there can never be any effective and good product development without publication. What are you developing if you cannot publish? That is, if you cannot subject your activity to your peers to criticize. Okay, so let's look at this graph. This pie chart is just to quickly look at the kind of funding that goes into research in UK, for example. This was before COVID. Look at it, a total of 303 million pounds sterling. Look at the distribution. I want you to take note of the contribution by the government of UK and by the private companies and charity organizations. Take note. Then look at the ranking of countries in terms of what they spend on research and development. Remember, I'm discussing with us today COVID-19, foe or friend of research and development. The first 15 countries that you can see on my slide, please look for your country. The next slide will show, again, the ranking in terms of percentage of GDP. The first 10 states, as you can see, the first 10 countries, as you can see there, you can also quickly look for your country. Okay, so when we therefore talk about what do you do for us, for example, when we talk about funding, what is the kind of funding that we are talking about here? Because we also talk a lot about funding, and I'm happy that the two very powerful ministers are at this conference. You know, Dr. Bonaya Onu, we know him for knowledge economy. And then our own minister, we know him as somebody who is in love with local content R&D. But that is love. Now, lack of funding for research, poor libraries, poor ICT, inadequate laboratory equipment, and very poor maintenance of research facilities. So, as we talk right now, for example, at NIPRID, we are taking into the institute, because of COVID, a lot of high-tech equipment. The next question on those equipments is, what is the maintenance regime that has been put in place? Somebody may be asking, but you are in charge. Why are you asking the question? I am asking the question because I'm a Nigerian and it's our country. Power and water supply, lack of supplies and other research inputs. Academics spend more than 90%. So I delve also a little into academics in the university. Most of our university lecturers, they spend most of their time teaching with little or no time for research. A theater or a professional course that is supposed to take 100 students is admitting 300 students. How is the lecturer going to do research? And even for those that do research, what are the incentives for them to do research? Therefore, the role of government. And I emphasized that this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. Whether we like it or not, my ministers and DG and all of you, captains of industry, whether we like it or not, government must drive. It is government that provides the vision. When the vision is clear, the roadmap is drawn and is clear, then it becomes if our countries move. Any country without a strong R&D agenda would not move. Even if the institutions are up and doing, having sleepless nights, no matter what we do at NIPRID, and we are doing a lot, and many institutions will tell you they are doing, but we have results to show. But no matter what we do, unless there's a global policy directive and clear roadmap for it, we will just be an iceberg. So proactive legislation, for example, to enforce business models, which must include local capacity. For example, at NIPRID here, when we came up with the drug for sickle cell, when we were licensing it to a foreign country, we insisted that the drug cannot be manufactured in a foreign country, that they must come here to Nigeria, not just Nigeria, they must come to Abuja and build a factory where they will manufacture the product. We need policies, we need acts of parliament to ensure that such things work. Research institutions increasing opportunity to participate in innovation and models, developing skills, and in protection and commercialization of IP assets are key. So we must have clear training and retraining for the skills, the scientists, because it is the scientists that drive this. Once you remove the scientists, I mean, why are we all jumping and happy that we are taking COVID-19 vaccine today? It's because some scientists did not sleep. Even though at that time, lecturers were on strike in Nigeria and they did not go to the labs. But other lecturers are in other parts of the world, researchers in other parts of the world who had sleepless nights and they came up with products. Local national firms, I'm happy Dr. Akpa is here. He has a big role to play. He's even a member of the board of NIPRID. But beyond that, he has his portfolio he has it to play. He's waiting for policies. I believe that some of the policies he has demanded for to this afternoon, if with the ministry does, if government does something about it, we will move further. To have their headquarters, in countries like Nigeria is also key, very key. Technology is always changing, therefore there's a need for upgrade. Establish talent pools. We need to establish national talent pools where we can deploy from and go into all of the time. Encourage industrialists to establish funds for new and innovative entrepreneurs. You see, in this country, most of our people in the private sector, they prefer to make millions and billions of donations for political campaigns than to provide this money as endowment in research institutions and universities for research into the different ailments that befall our communities. And I wonder why we behave like that, because most of us, you see, all this English that we speak, really, most of us, we speak this English because we are in the urban area. So when we talk about pharmacy, we talk about with all of it, because we are in the urban area, we are talking about it. In the villages where most of us grew up from. I am from a village. I grew up in a village, in Agaliga, a village where there's no road, no water, no electricity, no nothing, no hospital. And we drank the agbo, what we call agbo, those herbal medicines, we drank them. So with the least we can do in our time is now to turn over and ensure that we apply science and technology to make those things available in a way that it is accessible, is safe, and is efficacious for our people. And that's what we are doing at NIPRID. Pre-COVID-19, you see that funding, we complained simply about funding, therefore inventions and innovations were limited. Bridging the gap, the disconnect between the research communities and the industry, by networking and forging linkages with industrial firms and R&D institutions. In other climes, and some of us who had the privilege of doing some of our graduate studies on the bench outside this country, they were funded completely by private pharmaceutical industries out there. Dr. Akpasa, why is it that no pharmaceutical industry in Nigeria is sponsoring any research? Make R&D activities relevant to industries and the needs for people. Include tech programs in curriculum of primary and secondary school. We need to go back to and I decided to add this point because I knew that Dr. Ogbonaya Onu was going to be present at this meeting, because I know he commands a lot of it, because when he set up the national policy on nanotechnology, this was one of the things that we said should be considered. And so we think that it is also time that right from the primary school level, instead of one child doing 18 to 20 subjects that he may not need later, it is time to begin to put skill and entrepreneurship spirit in people right from when the mind could actually be modeled. Encourage private sector to commercialize, encourage development of science and technology parks. Right now, there's no university that can boast of a park. Even at NIPRID, the highest we have done is that we have a spin-off. And in getting that spin-off, we have to be smart and wise about it to get it registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission. So, but there's a need for technology parks where incubation is done, where ideas are generated. When you hear what do we think happens there? This thing happen with people's brains? No. In fact, most of our people are also there. So this I think can do it. We need enabling environment. So gainful, actionable insights from data group, building new skills, because if you look at what is going to happen now, the big data, artificial intelligence and machine learning, I can tell you that NIPRID, as we speak right now, NIPRID has strategically placed itself in that area, and we are just waiting. We are waiting for any private company or government, as it may be, to just give us a signal on what to do. And we do. We have a full-blown artificial intelligence and machine learning unit. We have the best nanomedicine center right now in our sub-region. Reliable access to energy and clean water. Digital tools do not completely remove the need for effective road systems and transportation links. Therefore, it is important for us to consider that, because big data analytics market, which is projected to reach about $103 billion US by next 2 years, is something we must, as a nation, strategically place ourselves towards now. Therefore, we should be ready to turn the predicted glut of bits and bytes into useful and actionable insights that could be accessed easily. Machinery on its own isn't enough to succeed in the fourth industrial revolution. You need to know how to run it. And to know how to run it, you must have the skill. To have the skill, you must be ready to upgrade, train and retrain. Africa is facing a potential gap here. Specialist technical skills required to work with emerging technologies. Even at NIPRID, with all our modest achievement, we can tell you that we need a lot of capacity building for our research fellows. And this is about the only place you can find this type of research fellows in this country. A conglomerate of this type of multidisciplinary group of research fellows, that you find them under the same roof, such that if you take a green grass from the bush, you can come out with a white tablet on your left hand. This is the only institution you can find such people gathered, and we are joking with them. The need for an innovative ecosystem. We must fast-track moves to skill and reskill the future and the existing workforce. We must refine on an ongoing basis through further education and lifelong. So COVID-19 has brought something. Now there's virtual learning. Did we dream of virtual learning? Today, we must embark on radical adjustments early within the educational system. The fragmented efforts must be turned into a cohesive approach. So now, when COVID came, what happened? This was how COVID hit us. Everything I have told us so far were things, a kind of plans, discussions that were all in place, projections, even before COVID. Then when COVID came, our own country had a committee called the PTF, Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. And it immediately challenged Nigerian scientists to look into the untapped biodiversity and begin to look at how we can rescue the nation. So we all knew that COVID-19 treatment could be obtained from our herbs. We knew, some of us who are scientists, who actually are versed and are experts in this area, and we know. And even for many people who didn't support it, they were only being mischievous, because we know that the solution to your problem is always around your own environment. The solution to your problem is not in another man's country. No, the solution is in your environment, your ability, your readiness, your will. You or you slave. Can we still remember WHO's warning to Africa, to Pretoria? In fact, if you remember, as at August 21, 2020, Nigeria had about 50,000 confirmed cases of infection. 37,000 had recovered, then 992 died. As at yesterday, Nigeria had confirmed 167,000, 163,000 recovered, and 2,000 deaths. Can we see? Now, if I want you to, I have put Nigeria values in parentheses so that you compare it with the values recorded by the world. And you now see, are you not going to wonder, why is the mortality due to COVID-19 less than other parts of the world? At NIPRID, we know the answer. We know the answer. But you know what? The answer is, we say we know the answer because we actually know how to gather scientific evidence to provide the answer. That is what we are saying. At this time, as we are talking today, as a nation, we are unable to explain why that is happening. Anything we are saying, we are just speculating. Why are we speculating? Because we are yet to prioritize exactly R&D the way it should be. If we did, by now we should be saying that so and so factors are responsible for the low mortality due to COVID-19 in our own community. and then we will design appropriate intervention to it. But this is not to comment the fact that one of the greatest things that ever happened at this time is the intervention, the CBN Intervention Fund for Research and Development. I believe that if that continues on a yearly basis for the next 5 to 10 years, then by the time there will be another COVID, then we won't be taken unaware. We would have prepared. So if Nigeria can develop R&D clusters and create an integrated innovation ecosystem, it stands to supercharge its academic and research community and the livelihood of millions, hence national development. So let's talk the things that have happened to us since COVID-19. All the products I'm showing you are products that COVID-19 is, and so within the last 1 year, we were able to develop these products, got them patented, products are ready. Some of them have been registered by and some for registration. Mafoma for is one of our products, a polyherbal solid oral dosage form for COVID-19. COVID-19 Premium Plus one NEP is already on its way to clinical trials. So within 1 year, you can see that within 1 year, for AD waiting for clinical trials in just 1 year because of COVID-19. But in 30 years before COVID-19, how many products did we show that are? How many did we that registered? 0. Artemisia to isolate, purify, and get elucidated artemisinin from Artemisia are raw in this institute. What happened? Nothing until COVID. It is that so I like to look at, now for those who always say that the language they speak is the language of, is English. Okay, let's look at this. For any of our product, I want us to get this very clearly. I believe the ministers are listening to me very well. For for those who may be thinking that all we talk about is English and why we always shout that you must do R&D, let me tell you that one natural product, if we decide to focus on one natural product, it will generate at least 360,000 jobs for one natural product. I have presented to you eight different products. I presented to you 8 different products. Now, so I want you to multiply 360,000 by 8 and see the number of jobs that would have been created. You see, so that's the difference between conventional or allopathic products and natural products, because there's a good link between natural product research from our end and agriculture versus transport. You see, because we deal directly with herbs and plants. Therefore, we have farmers and people who are going to cultivate those plants. And it's not normal planting and harvesting for subsistence living. No. You see, the raw materials, since the raw materials will be plants, then you need a huge number of people to be on the farm to plant those crops and those shrubs. That's huge employment. You need people that will harvest, and then a lot of people will be involved in the transportation. And when we talk like this, we are talking from experience, because we have the experience from the farm to the market, you know. So this is the kind of thing that happens when we decide to do what we are supposed to do. Now, as I round off, COVID-19 challenged the Nigerian researcher to innovate. They measured up, but did the leadership measure up? COVID-19 challenged the Nigerian researcher to innovate. They measured up, but did the leadership measure up? Well, you are free to answer the question the way you will want to answer. But if we measured up, we should be talking about our own therapies for COVID-19. We shouldn't be discussing anything imported to come and treat COVID-19, because the treatment for COVID-19 is available in this country, and it is available in our backyard from our natural resources. And NIPRID is ready to provide a lead. We have shown evidence. We have shown with the little resources that we have evidence, we have results to show from what we have been given. Therefore, all we need to do is that we are giving full backing and enabling environment to begin to cruise. The man who founds, and I'm not the one who said this, is Theodore Schools in 1964. He said the man who founds as his forefathers did, cannot produce much food, no matter how rich the land or how hard he works. And I repeat, the man who farms as his forefathers did cannot produce much food, no matter how rich the land or how hard he works. My slide is where we work at IDU. It is called the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Martins Emerge, for the expose on the COVID-19 friend or foe for research and development. Indeed, the answer is in our minds. We should know, and everybody has his own answer. Without taking much time, I will go to our last speaker for today, who is our co-convener in this conference from LX Law Firm, Barrister Davidson Oturu, who is going to lead us on the conversation, recommendations to improve access to COVID-19 vaccines and other interventions. Barrister Davidson Oturu, who happens to be my classmate in secondary school, please floor right, and you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Naraka. And as we tend to say in my school, then Floriat, that's what those of us from King's College tend to say. So it's a thing. Good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, the Honorable Minister for State for Health. Good afternoon, my DG, Dr. Tadigwe, Dr. Akpa, fantastic paper. You've basically finished all what we're supposed to say today. My president, Obafemi Tagaba, I greet you, sir. Again, and all the other persons on the panel, it's great being here. Good afternoon to everyone. So while I was listening to Mr. Agaba as well as Dr. Akpa and Professor Meji, then I was left wondering if I still have anything to say, because everything has been said. And it's a good thing when you're the last speaker. So I guess some of us should strive to be the last speaker, because then you can just rely on everything that has been said and say, I adopt all what everybody has said, because that is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And as I go through my slides, which I will breeze through, you'll actually realize that truly everything has been said. When the DG was telling Mr. Tagaba that his time was up, I wanted to say, can you donate 15 minutes of my time to him so that I would just thank him for presenting, because he was basically speaking on quite a number of things that I have on my slide. But one of the reasons why we decided to partner, why ALEX decided to partner with NIPRID on this particular webinar was because, you see, the importance of what NIPRID is doing, and even the pharmaceutical industry globally is doing, is arguably one of the most vital and critical things now that the whole world needs. Think of the fact that without the vaccines, without the medical interventions, without the thinking around how to solve this problem, we would probably be groping in the dark. If COVID-19 had happened several years ago, like we saw with the Spanish fly, more people could have possibly died, but all the different, R&D, to the point, I won't name names, but one president of a Western country was even recommending that people should start injecting themselves with disinfectant. We could have probably been doing that. We could have been doing a lot of really strange things, if not for the pharmaceutical industry. But one thing that we also need to be able to understand as well is the role that intellectual property plays to make some of these things available. And having the president of IPLAN, in the person of Mr. Obafemi Tagaba, speak around the IP rights that go along with patents and other pharmaceutical products, vaccines and medicines and drugs is quite crucial to our conversation as well. So I'll move just straight right in. And I'll skip, like I said, a lot has been said. So what we did was we tried to identify what are the issues you would typically see that limit the availability of medicines generally, and even vaccines. You talk about high prices of medical products. Of course, governments have had to pay for some of these vaccines, and then they've graciously donated it to other less endowed countries. But a lot of money has gone into that. And so what we saw, of course, was that the richer countries were able to get a larger portion of the vaccines. So that in itself has meant that Nigeria has quite a low number of vaccines that are available as a result of the price and other factors. Of course, there's the weak regulatory regime, which we all know. A couple of other things here that I'll just skip so that we'll just move straight to a few other stuff. Mr. Tagaba did lay emphasis on a couple of IP rights. And then, again, like I said, speaking on my slides, like he had a peep into it, the focus is usually on patents for the pharmaceutical industry with focus on vaccines. And the reason is because other IP rights have their place. Trademarks is also important. And a trademark would allow you to identify the particular product that you're looking for. For instance, AstraZeneca is a trademark, right? You wouldn't know what that product is without that name AstraZeneca stamped on it, or the Pfizer vaccine. All those are trademarks. So after the patent comes the trademark, because the patent is what you have invented, what you have created that did not exist before, or you have improved what did not exist before. So before COVID-19, for instance, a lot of the drugs that we speak of now, they didn't exist in themselves, right? Or even if they existed, they were not used for a particular purpose, but there were probably now improvements on a few of them. We started hearing about the possibilities of what chloroquine could do, and people started looking at a few other things. I know that NIPRID is at clinical trial stage now for some of these to curb the coronavirus. So with all of this, you've seen those creations of patents come into play, which is why patents are basically quite crucial and important. But Mr. Agaba has already described what IP rights are. So I wouldn't also IP rights is that it provides for the exclusive exploitation of the moral and economic rights of creators. So when you create something, then not only do you own the monetary value, that whether anybody else can use it without your permission is something that you also own. So I cannot just in my bedroom decide to start manufacturing AstraZeneca without having a license from them to be able to do that. And that's what a patent gives to you. It allows you to have exclusive protection over that IP you have created for a period of 20 years in Nigeria. Now, of course, we have the Patent and Designs Act in Nigeria, and I've already said that, Mr. Agaba has already said that, Dr. Tapa has also spoken on that. One thing that we also need to understand is that patents themselves contribute roughly 80%, well, 70 to 80% of the overall revenue of pharmaceutical companies. So think about all the large pharmaceutical companies that you know, both in Nigeria and abroad. Patents is what gives them value around their drugs, value around what they manufacture. Take away those drugs from their portfolio, and what you have are shell companies. Think of all of them. Think of Pfizer. You know, think of Bicham. Think of all of them. There will be nothing left when you take away patents from them. You know, so protecting their patents is actually quite important, and it's something that anybody would jealously guard, because once it's gone, then you know, you might as well just say that you set up a charitable shop. But let's look at some recommendations, because my topic was actually to look at recommendations to improve access to COVID-19 vaccines and other interventions. And everybody has probably spoken on and given these recommendations that I have. You know, when Mr. Sagaba was to speak on waivers, I decided to look at compulsory licensing of patents. But he also went there too. So I said, well, there goes whatever was remaining of my slide that Dr. Akbar had not already finished on. There are a few recommendations that we still decided to leave, and we'll still touch on the other ones as well, just for context, and so that my slides will not have been made in vain. So we're talking about formulating, implementing, and monitoring comprehensive national policies for medicine and vaccines, while ensuring all stakeholders' commitment to implementation. Now, I'm not a pharmacist, I'm a lawyer, but of course, policies, laws, and regulations are what lawyers tend to look at, especially when we are trying to have discussions or defend a client or advise them around protection of their rights, and also defending them against anybody that may have violated them. And in my research around that, I discovered that the maiden edition of the National Drug Policy in Nigeria was launched in 1990. And I know that the Federal Ministry of Health, under the present leadership, also issued an NDP for 2015 to 2020 that were targeted at alcohol and other drug issues. But what I seem to have noticed, and again, the Honorable Minister for State for Health is here, and the DG is here, is that it appears there is no national policy that is specific to COVID-19 vaccines in Nigeria. I may be wrong, but if you look at Australia and the Philippines, for instance, they have a very clear national policy around that. And one of the recommendations that we have in terms of improving access is that Nigeria should look at formulating a very comprehensive national policy, not just for COVID-19 now, but for other vaccines, that could possibly, be required to enable access for the general citizenry. And I think if such a national policy exists, maybe there should be awareness drawn around its existence and its value in helping Nigerians to curb the scourge of the COVID-19 virus. Of course, Professor Temeje, I was in love with all the statistics and all the slides and all the information that he brought out. It made it so real and so tangible that R&D is on right now. It's something that the government needs to heavily invest in, and the reason is manifest. And it shouldn't come when there is a crisis, but when a crisis shows itself, like Dr. Akbar said, don't waste for its benefit. And I dare say that based on what Professor Temeje shared, we saw all the budgets and investments that have gone into R&D in other countries. It's something that we can't do without at this time. There has to be a lot of awareness drawn around the need to create, the need to do the research, and eventually that will lead to the development. And a couple of things that I also shared here, I know that the CBN as well has been involved in taking some initiatives around R&D. They released a healthcare research and development grant guideline, so it's our hope and sincere prayer that not just the CBN and other similar agencies would be interested in this, but even the private sector would heavily invest in government agencies like NIPRI that are involved in R&D and other pharmaceutical companies that have shown that they are in the lead in trying to come up with solutions to the problems that we face. Mr. Tagabas spoke, so Dr. Akbar spoke around patent waivers. So I guess I'll just skip that completely, and then probably go a little bit to compulsory licensing and just speak around how it could probably be considered. It was touched on just to give it different strokes. Now, so, of course, like the name suggests, when we talk about compulsory licensing, we're talking about how you use a patented product without necessarily getting the consent of the patent owner. So typically what would happen is that if somebody owns the patent to a drug, to a vaccine, you would need to have his consent before you can do that. But with compulsory licensing, there are situations where you can actually, without his consent, get to use that vaccine or that drug. And we consider that this may be one of such situations where it could assist in the access to the COVID-19 vaccines, and I'll explain why. Now, the Paris Convention for the Protection of Industrial Property empowers each contracting state party to grant compulsory licenses to prevent abuses which might result from the exercise of the exclusive rights conferred by the patent. Now, the Paris Convention is one of these international conventions that different countries of the world have signed up to, and it also touches on intellectual property. Nigeria is a signatory to the Paris Convention, even though we have not domesticated it yet. That means the National Assembly has not passed it into a law. So to an extent, it is persuasive, even though not binding in all situations. But the Paris Convention has said that where abuse may arise, from exclusive rights conferred by a particular patent, then state parties can actually grant compulsory licenses. So we could look at this sort of situation where it could be considered that, well, maybe it would be something that needs to be accessible to everybody, right? So why not grant that license? Of course, we've spoken about TRIPS as well. It authorizes all member states the agreement to use compulsory licenses without the authorization of the right holder in appropriate circumstances. Now, TRIPS, again, and even the Doha Declaration, which is also a World Trade Organization convention, also provides that compulsory licenses can be granted, even though there will be the freedom to determine the ground. So we've seen that 3 international conventions, which have been signed by most of the countries of the world, provide for compulsory licenses that can arise in peculiar situations and appropriate circumstances. Now, what are some of these appropriate circumstances? Nigeria, even the Patent and Designs Act provides for compulsory licenses. You can apply, the state can apply to the court, and or the minister. Well, even though this would be more for domestic patents now, but can actually authorize compulsory licenses in the interest of the public. Now, compulsory licensing is usually given after a period of 3 years from the grant of the licenses, but it can even be granted before that period. And one of such instances is where the government needs to use it in an emergency. Like I had mentioned, the Doha Declaration provides for it, but it also permits WTO members to take measures to protect the public of its citizens. And like I said, the Patent and Designs Act stipulates that where it relates to public health reasons, compulsory licenses can actually be issued. We saw this happen in Ghana in 2005, so it wasn't something strange that came into play. Compulsory licenses were granted for generic HIV and AIDS drugs in 2005 when HIV and AIDS was becoming a serious pandemic there. We also saw it in Taiwan as well when they had the avian flu epidemic, and then they also had to grant compulsory license for the generic production of Tamiflu, which helped in curbing the spread of avian flu. So it's nothing strange. It's not like this pandemic in itself has now made it something that did not exist before. It has always been there. And even during the time of this pandemic, we have seen a nation like Israel, for instance, they've issued compulsory patent licensing for the importation of Retinove, which, though a patented HIV drug, they've tested it and it's been shown to be quite effective on coronavirus patients. And of course, the Canadian government had also amended its laws to expedite the issuance of compulsory licenses on patented inventions necessary for the treatment of COVID-19 in Canada. I do understand as well that AstraZeneca was also granted compulsory licenses in a few instances so that drugs could be manufactured. But even related to the grant of compulsory licenses, you also need to be able to consider whether the countries who would be able to get that license would have the appropriate manufacturing sector of pharmaceuticals that can actually create those drugs and make them effective enough. Because the thing there with your patent is that there has to be quality around it. Whatever is being produced in the original site, it needs to be licensed and produced and have the same quality wherever it is being used. The question is, does Nigeria and the rest of Africa actually have the facilities to be able to effectively create the vaccines the way that the original manufacturers intended for it to be? And I think that's an answer for the R&D guys. And then another recommendation is having a strong collaborative framework with all relevant sectors, regulators, and stakeholders. So you have NOTAP, for instance, that deals with technology transfer. You also have need to collaborate with different stakeholders, would also assist in improving access to COVID-19 vaccines. We all know all the regulatory hurdles we face, bureaucracy in getting the approvals to register in the different places. If you go to NAFDAC, you would probably spend maybe 5 to 6 months, just trying to clear through all the bureaucratic bottlenecks there. I dare say that if it takes that amount of time to try and bring in a valuable vaccine or a product, or to even manufacture, then it may lose its relevance by the time all the bottlenecks have been clear, especially the ones that are basically avoidable. Tackling illiteracy and ignorance. We've heard a lot of conspiracy theories. People have called the virus all manner of things. I think it comes from a place of ignorance generally and illiteracy. People, when I have conversations with them, I'm surprised at how they rationalize what the vaccines will do to them. I think that the enlightenment needs to go to a very granular level, both to the educated, which is where the ignorance would come in, and to those who are non-educated, which is where the literacy would come in, on the need to allow these vaccines to be administered so that we can have a safer and healthier country and move to the kind of life that we had before. And I think that brings me to the end of my slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barrister Oturu, for the sticking to time. You actually presented within your allotted time. As we wrap up, the conference is gradually coming to an end, but I will have to use this opportunity to recognize some dignitaries that have joined us, and I will give the floor to Her Excellency Clara Pulido Escandel to say a few words in 1 minute. Also, Dr. Yaba Yakubu, our NIPRID vaccine lead, will be given 1 minute also to say something. But before I call on Her Excellency, I want to recognize the presence amongst us, Pharmacist David Erava Hime, the Director from Federal Ministry of Science and Tech and a board member of NIPRID. You are welcome onto the platform, sir. Also, our immediate past DG of NIPRID, Professor Gamaliel Carminus, has been on the platform since. You are welcome onto the platform. The Deputy Director, TCAM, at the Federal Ministry of Health, Pharmacist Tilly Titus, we are welcome. A prominent director at the FCCPC, Pharmacist Mopelola Akeju, we recognize you on this platform also. And our own Executive Secretary of PMG-MAN, Pharmacist Frank Omanome, whom I will give a minute also after Dr. Yaba to speak. So I will yield the floor to Her Excellency Clara Pulido Escandel, the Ambassador of Cuba to Nigeria. Your Excellency, ma'am.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for inviting me to this seminar. This webinar has been very useful and very interesting for me, and I can mention that I am learning a lot about Nigeria and Nigeria interest on the case of COVID vaccines. I want to give you a greeting from Cuba, and I want to add my voice saying that, as you know, we in Cuba, we are also working very hard in the fight against COVID. We have been able to produce till the moment 5 vaccine candidates, and it has been announced this week that 2 of these candidates are having a high % of effectiveness. I can mention that the first announcement came from Soberana 02, a vaccine candidate which with 2 jabs has achieved 62% of effectiveness against COVID. And most recently was announced the Abdala, another Cuban vaccine candidate, has achieved more than 92% of effectiveness, putting this vaccine candidate Abdala among the 4 vaccines in the world with better effectiveness. Cuba is working hard with the countries in Latin America, with WTO and with other friendly countries like Nigeria, to share our achievements in this regard and to share our capacities in this regard, as well as we have done till now, sending 56 medical brigades to 40 countries and territories to fight directly COVID. So Cuba, as always, is together with Nigeria, with Africa, and with many countries at the United Nations level in order to continue fighting COVID, and our experience and our capacities are also to serve the entire humanity. Once again, thank you very much for this opportunity, and thanks to NIPRID for this extraordinary experience.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I will call Dr. Yaba Yakubu to present a 1-minute talk to the platform. The lead in NIPRI. Dr. Yaba Yakubu, you have the floor.
A good day. Standing on this protocol, as stipulated, in access to COVID-19 and other intervention, intellectual property, patent waiver, and other critical factors, and Nigeria in general. As a way forward in combating the COVID-19 pandemic, this is an eye-opener for us in the production and accessibility of vaccine, and challenge to a teaming scientist in Nigeria towards a mindset into research on infectious disease vaccines. Indeed, you have all put your best effort to make the event unforgettable. We really owe you a lot. I wish to express our sincere appreciation to our core convener, Davidson Oturu, partner Alex, support to NIPRIT. Let me express my humble gratitude to the convener, my able and articulated Director General and Chief Executive Officer, NIPRIT, Dr. Obi Peter Adu, who is ever ready to provide support for research and development with specific emphasis on local content. To all the participants and listeners, both at home and abroad, we are grateful. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yakubu Yaba. I will call on the Executive Secretary of PMG-MAN, Pharmacist Frank Omuneme, to address, to give a 1-minute goodwill. Pharmacist Frank Monome, Executive Secretary, the floor is yielded to you.
Thank you so much, Dan Raka. I am so excited to participate in this discourse. I want to stand on existing protocols. However, I want to commend the Honorable Minister for Health, the Honorable Minister for Technology, Science and Technology, who are here present to have this all-important discourse. And then the Director General of NIPRIT, our own Dr. Obi Adigwe, for this timely discourse. There's no better time to have this kind of conversation than now, where we all know the buzz discourse is now on vaccine inequality and vaccine nationalization. I must say that all the panelists, all the presenters have made very numerous contributions to this discourse. That I must add to the recommendation beyond what my immediate past chairman, Dr. Okeakpa, recommended, that NIPRI should put up a kind of discourse or dialogue, national dialogue, to drive this discussion. I will suggest that there should be a kind of setup, the government should set up a kind of national council on medicine security. The idea is that most times, most of these policies take place in silos. The idea is that this council should have a coordinated policy that will drive the vision of achieving not just vaccine, but in totality, medicine security for the country. And my take is that if you look at the most presentations, all centers around multi-sectoral approach to solving the problem of access to vaccines and access to medicine. And my recommendation is that the presidency, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Science and Technology, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, of course, even the Foreign Affairs Ministry, and in that committee, in that council, there should be NIPRID, which would drive the research and development, the Central Bank of Nigeria, NAFDAC, NUTAB, and at the center of all we'll have a Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Group of Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. I think we will have this kind of Medicine Security Council well constituted. We'll have a policy direction that will drive all-inclusive access to not just vaccine, but access to other medicines that the country may need. Once again, I want to commend the team that put this up. It is a very insightful discourse. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. As the time is fast spent, before I call on Barrister Theophilus Emua to give the vote of thanks and closing remarks, I will also want to recognize on the platform all our research fellows and staff of the Institute that are on the platform since the beginning, especially the Acting Director of Finance and Admin, Mr. Zarma Levy, our technical department heads, led by Associate Professor Isimi, Dr. Jamila, Dr. Ineka. I can see all of you on the platform. Our own head of consultancy unit, Professor Egaraba, is good to have you on the platform, and all your comments are noted. I will call on Dr. Muhammad Ibrahim Jawa, who is a TMP, to say a word to this conference. Dr. Muhammad Ibrahim Jawa is a renowned traditional medicine practitioner based in Kano. It will be good to hear from our indigenous people, because we need to tap into the indigenous knowledge of our TMPs. Dr. Muhammad Ibrahim Jawa, your hand was up. Okay. We can have the last comment from Dr. Aliyu Muhammad Maiguru, former commissioner in Bauchi. You also sent in a comment. You can unmute yourself and say something to the conference.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, sir. You have 1 minute.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. Very briefly, I want to congratulate the organizers of this important meeting aimed at finding solution to vaccines supply and distribution in the country. Specifically, I want to thank the Honorable Minister of State for Health and the Honorable Minister of Science and Technology, as well as the Honorable Chair House Committee on Health and the organizers of this very important meeting. This is the best way to start. I think we are not late. We have all the material and the human resources to produce every kind of vaccine in Nigeria. However, we need commitment. We need to invite all the stakeholders. We need to be very, very focused in our strategic plan. I wish everyone a safe return to your various offices and happy deliberation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aliyu Muhammad Maiguru. The time is fast spent. I will yield the floor to Barrister Theophilus Emua, who has been on standby to present the vote of thanks and closing remarks for this conference. Barrister, you have the floor.
Hello, thank you very much. Good afternoon, all. I think some of the comments that have come have already taken care of some of my closing remarks. But I would like to first of all recognize, the Honorable Minister of Science and Technology, Dr. Bunaya Onu, the Honorable Minister of State, Ministry of Health, Dr. Senator Oloronimbe Mamora,
the Director General of the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development, Dr. Adigwe, my colleague, the President of IPLAN, Mr. Agaba, the President of the West African Pharmaceutical Association, Manufacturers Association, Dr. Oke Akpa, and all the other guests and listeners. I thank you all for joining today. We've had an interesting discussion. What one hopes is that we will not stop at merely discussing. We will now convert the discussion into action. And that is why I'm glad that the minister is here, so that what needs to be translated can be taken from the top down. All the different stakeholders appear to be present, and we're hoping that in the no distant future, we can begin to see some results from this sort of conversation. We are a law firm, but we try to provide platforms like this where current and topical issues can be discussed in order to encourage development of our society, because if the society develops, then we as part of that society would also enjoy the development. So I thank you all once again for your attendance, and on this note I will say good afternoon to everyone and have a good day.
Thank you very much. Before we round up, there will be some little housekeeping, some messages. I will yield the floor to the DG if there are some things he needs to pass before we wrap up the session. DG, sir.
No messages from this end. No.
Okay. I don't know if the Honorable Minister has anything to say on this.
Before the Honorable Minister talks, can I?
Okay. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Can I just greet the Honorable Minister again to say, Honorable Minister, I have a personal stake in your position for 3 reasons. You are my senator. I live in Lagos. You are my minister. I work in the pharmaceutical company. And you are in the same area. You are a medical doctor. You are one person who inspires me a lot when I see you in a public discussion because of your serious-mindedness and capacity to translate things to action. I made a personal decision not to give talks or keynote or anything out of protest. Protest in the sense that we have spoken and spoken and spoken in this country and nothing comes. But when I saw your photo and the DG told me you will be here in person and that the Honorable Minister of Science will be here in person, I say, I've got a chance. So I won't let this chance elude me. I am asking you, sir, in your usual pragmatic way, let us begin to take some action, no matter how small it is. Even if it is to invite a few of us, not more than 10. Honorable Minister, we can do these things. We can do these things. I leave it at that. I am available. My constituency is farmer. At West African level, I know effort being made by other countries. It would be a disaster if Rwanda and South Africa go ahead of us to have vaccine plants. The reason is that the rest of the world will not give us support because there will be argument that we should take from there. And this is what I call wasting the opportunity. Modular vaccine plants can be done. The industry is ready to do that partnership. Let us have a deal room discussion, devoid of talk and politics. Honorable Minister, I have confidence in you as my minister. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. The Honorable Minister, sir.
Well, let me thank everyone that has been part of this webinar today. I purposely stayed all through to get all the input, to get all the conversation and all that. And I must say that it's been quite inspiring, you know, the quality of speakers that have been invited to be part of this, and various inputs from these different speakers. And of course, I want to thank Dr. Akpa. Thank you for your kind words. Fortunately, you were the keynote speaker, and you did say, if I may paraphrase, that the takeaway, if nothing, from your presentation should be that, well, crisis is bad. It's bad enough. But wasting the crisis is more devastating. And I cannot agree less with you in that regard. And on the point raised in just, I mean, you know, the follow-up a short while ago, let me assure you that there are efforts in place, which in the incubator, let me put it that way, in order to ensure that we do not waste the crisis of COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, I can say, and I've said that over and over again, that the greatest beneficiary so far is the health sector, because we have seen a lot of developments that probably wouldn't have come to be but for COVID, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of whether even the drugs production, in terms of various diagnostic things. If you talk of the PCR, for example, the PCR lab, we started with just about 4, and as of today, we have well over 100, and that is something that is quite exponential. Of course, not to talk of various sanitizers and all that, but and of course masks and all that, and other PPEs. So that's just, but the focus now is the production or manufacturing of our own COVID vaccine, which is really high on the table right now. That much I can say. Then let me also briefly commend as well the Obafemi Agaba, who spoke on the intellectual property, issues of waivers and compulsory licensing and all that. I think one of the things that we have tried to do all along in our response activities to this COVID-19 pandemic is the need to balance lives with livelihood, to strike a balance. And you recall that even as at the time that we decided to ease the lockdown, it wasn't because we were right to do it that point, but because we were sensitive to the need of the citizens of this country to eke out a living. So we responded to that. And at that point in time, I'm saying this because, Obafemi did say that there is need to balance, in granting this, compulsory licensing. We must also look at, those who have made it possible in terms of their patent and all that. So that is also important, to balance this thing, and of course, in the interest of humanity. Don't forget that the message of WHO and DG at the inception of this COVID-19 pandemic was global solidarity. But that was the message. But in reality, along the line, can we really say we had that, or we're having that, when you now look at the issue of vaccine nationalism, hoarding of vaccines and all that? Can you really say that we're getting that? No. But then again, the point is we need to do things our own, without any homegrown, so to speak, homegrown. And that's where we're heading for. And I believe we would get to that. And to our friend, Professor Martins Emeje, I commend you too for your submission. But you see, in all this, because I could see the passion in your presentation and all that. But in all this, the fault is in us and not in our stars, as they say, And because you did say it, that the solution to a problem is in that environment, and the solution to our own problem is in this very environment. Yes, that even buttresses the point that the fault is in us. So we have to find a way of doing things differently. We have to identify our priorities and follow through those priorities and all that. And it involves getting everybody on board. So, well, those of us who are where we are, like every other person, we're all where we are for just a while. We won't be there forever. And we constantly need to remind ourselves that how would we want to be remembered when we are no longer there? And that is the challenge before all of us. And of course, we all need to do it together. And then I'm still going to challenge you, because you just told us that the reason for the low fatality of COVID in our own situation lies with us. So I will want you to start working on those. We need, you said it's an issue of R&D. Yes, I cannot agree less, but then let us know from your own findings, from your own research, to let us know why we appear to be doing well, compared to what is happening in some other climes. And of course, Arturo, yes, from Alex, thank you very much too. You did the roundup. So for everyone, and to the DG, who is the brain behind all this, I want to thank you and your team. And I believe that we will continue to challenge ourselves. We'll continue to do what we need to do together, and work together for the good of our country and, of course, the good of humanity. So I want to thank you personally for being able to put this together, and for all that have been part of this. Thank you very much. And Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Cuba, thank you very much for being part of this. We very much appreciate. Of course, we've always said that there is a lot that we can also learn from you, because of particularly in the area of primary healthcare and all that. Well, I'm sure the discussion, the conversation continues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, you distinguished Senator Dr. Senator Mamora, for the kind words and all the challenges you have given. As a way of wrap up and conclusion, I want to inform this gathering that the NIPRID International Conference on Health Access and Socioeconomic Development Beyond COVID-19 has been scheduled, and the call for abstract has been released. The deadline for submission of abstract is going to be July 15th. The event is scheduled to come up on 20th to 23rd of September 2021. The theme for that conference, which is going to be the first multi-sectoral approach to solution finding, is assuring health access and socioeconomic development beyond COVID-19. Thank you to all our participants. Please avail us the opportunity of filling our survey, the questionnaire we have distributed. We will send it to your email, and also share the record of these events for those that need it. Thank you, and God bless as we enjoy the rest of the day and the weekend. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you so much.